Hey, Dr. Joe's in the house on this wonderful, well, rainy Wealth Wednesday here in the Washington, D.C. area. And hope everyone's doing well wherever you are and so on. So let's have a look. I'm going to be going live. In fact, I am live now on Instagram as well as Facebook. So welcome, Instagram folks. And it's going to be a great session. So anyway, so today we're going to talk about rent, getting your money, as they say, and show me the money. And it's really talk about collecting rent and the systems, associated with that. For a lot of, landlords, they struggle with this. In fact, I was talking to a landlord earlier on today about the difficulty that they've had collecting rent from their tenants, to the point whereby they had to evict the tenant. They almost lost their home for that. And as I was talking to the landlord, it was clear that it was just, there was no systems in place. There was no structure to the place. It was just, give me some rent. And if the tenant paid, then fine. If they didn't pay, he'll call. They ignored him. And it was just backwards and forwards. And he was extremely frustrated, to the point whereby, almost lost his house. So, so that's the gist of it. So this is the topic: collecting rent, systems and strategies. And as usual, we're going to do the live stream. If you've got any questions, anything to do with real estate, please put them in the chat box and I'll get to them in about 20 minutes from now. Any questions about issues, challenges, problems that you're facing in your real estate environment, whether it be renting, landlording, buying, dealing, flipping, wholesaling, whatever it is, just put them in the chat box and I'll do the best that I can to answer your questions in about 20 minutes. And for those people who want to do a deep dive, into a specific situation that they're facing, you can book a one-on-one with me. You go to my website, www.joeasimo.com, www.joeasimo.com. As usual, I had a fantastic sessions yesterday on a live stream, a one-on-one, and I've got one tomorrow scheduled. So the situations are varied, and the other one was about raising private money, how to structure themselves in such a way they can get private money. I shared with them strategies that I've used that have worked, and raising over a couple of $1 million, I suppose, over the time. On private money. It could be done. I'm not saying you can do the same thing, but there's a way to this thing. And I can share some of those issues if you're having if you need to raise money for whatever reason for your projects. Anyway, book a one-on-one with me. Looking forward to one tomorrow. We're going to talk about, I think it's short sales, trying to buy a house in a short sale. And I bought a couple of those over the years. So I'll be sharing some of my experiences with that, how to make it work. Okay, so let's get down to business and let's get down to the theme of the day, which is collecting rent, systems and strategies. So nothing destroys a landlord's peace of mind, believe me, faster than inconsistent rent payment. Inconsistent can be on time, off time, no time, or whatever it is. So whether you're managing one door, one property, one single family house, or many 50, 100, if your rent doesn't arrive on time every month, or it doesn't arrive at all, it's going to impact your cash flow. It's going to impact your ability to pay your mortgages, your expenses, and ultimately your sanity can all suffer. So yeah, too many landlords, especially those new to this business, approach rent collection, in my opinion, in a sort of haphazard or reactive mindset. The good news is that there are proven systems and strategies that successful investors have used to transform rent day from a source of anxiety into really a seamless part of running a profitable real estate business. So today we're going to talk about, in this live stream, we're going to unpack the lessons learned that I've had over the 35 years, and also others, both the good, the bad, the ugly, both triumphant and painful, from people who've been in the trenches. We broke it down to 6 sections. We're going to do a deep dive into 6 sections. We'll explore the systems, the strategies, the tools, and the communications methods that differentiate, I think, struggling landlords from those who are building sustainable long-term rental empires. So whether you're just starting out or scaling, these hopefully real-world insights will help you collect more rent more consistently and hopefully with less stress. So we're going to break it down to 6 parts and so on. So we've talked about, why is this topic critical to your landlording success? It's really important. If you can't get your income, if you can't get your rent, you are going out of business. That's just the bottom line. So let's go down to the first of the 6, which is why systems matter. Why systems matter. Why should you put things in place to collect your rent? I suppose the question is, are you collecting rent or are you chasing it? You collecting it or chasing after it. I think you understand what that means. Collecting means that it's coming to you. Chasing means you're going to have to run them down, run people down, the deadbeats, the pay laters, and all that kind of stuff. So too many landlords confuse hope with a plan. Hope is, cross your fingers, hope that the tenants pay. A plan means having systems in place for that. So simply asking tenants to pay rent on time really isn't a strategy. It's a wish. I wish, I cross my fingers that you're going to pay. That doesn't usually always work. Successful investors know the predictable cash flow, that your predictable cash flow really depends on predictable systems. The difference between a landlord who gets paid like clockwork and one who's chasing down rent checks lies in the structure they put in place. Things like from automated payment platforms like Zelle, Cash App, Appfolio, Rent Ready. There's a whole bunch of different platforms, tenant right, and so on. So you have these automated platforms where you can automate your rent collection, and also to a certain extent, also if you got a good lease, a clearly written lease with rent clauses in the lease about what is owed, when it's due, what the late fees are, and all so on. That really helps. It minimizes confusion. So successful investors create a framework where there is zero ambiguity. There's no scope for misunderstanding. They explain to the tenant, and I'll go through that on the date from the start all the way through the end. So investors who fail in this area often admit that they didn't enforce rules early on. They kind of let things slip, and they allowed excuses to snowball. I can't pay this, my car broke down, or I had to get some diapers for my kids, or whatever the reason is, and they allowed it. They fell for the sob story. I mean, I'm not saying I haven't fell for that one. I have, and there are some tenants who know how to kind of pull the emotional strings on you, and or they didn't even clearly communicate expectations at the beginning when you assign the lease. So these are some of the downsides that some of the landlords have. And what are the consequences of all this? Well, the consequences are several. One, mispayments, resentment. Some people don't feel like they should pay rent, or feel resentful for you that you're collecting their money. And if it gets totally out of control, then you may have to evict people because of non-payment. So it's really important. Investors who succeed use onboarding, which is when the tenant first steps into the home, as a first step in their systems. They set the tone from day one, what their expectations are, and the do's and don'ts. It is set from day one as part of the quote unquote onboarding process. Tenants will walk through the payment systems, the payment processes, when to pay, how much to pay, how to pay, and the dates when the rents are due, late fee schedule. If they don't pay by this date, this is what's owing. And some landlords even have incentives where if you pay early or pay on time for a period of time, they give you some bonuses. So, this clarity isn't just professional, it's powerful. You set the tone from day one. And that's something that a lot of landlords don't do. They kind of wing over it. Hey, the rent is $1,000. It's due on the 1st, and that's it. Not me. It's $1,000. This is when it's due. If it's not paid by this date, there's a late fee of this. This is how you can pay. It's platform 1, which is Zelle, let's say. This is my account number. Platform 2, let's just say Cash App. This is my account number. Payment system number 3 is this, and 4, and so on. So you give the tenants multiple ways to pay you. You provide them with all the information that they need to pay. They understand exactly how much is due, when it's due, and what the consequences of late payments are. It's all spelled out on day one and in nitty-gritty detail. So there's no misunderstanding. Okay, so what are the action items associated with step 1? Choose and consistently use an automated rent collection platform. I think that's important. Walk every new tenant through the rent expectations, at least signing what's expected of them at the lease signing. In fact, I do even at the initial meeting, or when I'm showing the house for rent. I let them know this is how I do it. Include firm late fee structures in your lease agreement. That obviously has to comply with your local state laws as it pertains to late fees. And you also want to document all communications around rent and enforce rules from day one. So document communications, whether it be email, whether it be text messages, whether it be certified mail. You want to document all your communication that pertains to rent collection. Okay, so that's number 1, which is why systems matter. And number 2, I'm going to talk about payment platforms and try and make it convenient for your tenant. So this one is called payment platforms and tenant convenience. And I suppose the question is, are you making it easy for your tenants to pay on time, or are you making it difficult for them to pay you? So one of the simplest reasons why tenants don't pay rent on time is because paying you is a hassle. They got to go through hoops just trying to pay you. And, you don't want to do that. You want to make it as easy as possible. And if my tenants, most of my tenants, in fact, have Cash App, apps. It's surprising. Everybody has it, as far as I know. At least all my tenants do. So what do? I allow them to pay by Cash App. I can't say to them, well, I don't accept Cash App, because it's more convenient for them. And so I set up an account and I put the things and information in place such that it makes it easy for them to pay. Likewise, some of my tenants pay by Zelle. So I can't say, well, I don't accept Zelle. I create an account and then I tie it to my bank account. I can't say, well, I don't like Venmo. If I find out most of my tenants have Venmo, then I make it easy for them to pay by Venmo. I think you follow what I'm saying. So whether it's, the process should not be a hassle. So whether it's an outdated system, clunky technology, or no digital option at all, your process can either encourage or discourage timely payments. In my opinion, successful landlords invest in tenant-friendly platforms. Again, tenant-friendly, you're looking at it from the eyes of the tenant, not from the eyes of you. These platforms provide flexibility, transparency, and reminders. There are apps like Buildium, Avail, Cozy, Appfolio, Tenant. There's a whole bunch of these different things where they can process tenant payments. They also send things like alerts. They track transactions and also provide automated receipts, which is pretty good. That way there's a paper trail. They know exactly what they paid, when they paid it, and there's you can create ledgers from that thing. So this sort of fosters accountability on both sides. The tenants know that if they paid, there's a documentation for that, and likewise you can provide them proof that you received their rents. Also some landlords use incentives to encourage rent payments, especially timely payments, and they use it sort of strategically. Some landlords offer small rewards for consistent on-time payments, and which is really good. I don't do that, but I mean you can do that. Others promote auto pay confirmations. Auto pay means that they can sign up and they can pay automatically, whether it be monthly or bi-weekly or whatever it is, and everything's done digitally with confirmations. Again, it's for convenience. Those who struggle, this is landlords now, often rely on manual collections. I mean, there was a time when I used to knock on people's doors to collect rent. Hey, the good old days. I'll go down to a house and the lights are on and I show up, knock on the door, then suddenly all the lights go off and it's silence in the house, and the rent man's here, and I mean, I don't do that anymore. I mean, it's ridiculous. So manual collections I'm not into. I don't collect rent from people. I don't collect money from people. Everything is done electronically. You need to educate your tenants on payment options and offer incentives that make sense to them to encourage on-time payments or discourage late payments. The friction adds up, and so the more friction you have in the process, the more difficult it becomes for them. So what are some of the action items associated with the payment platforms? Implement a digital platform with mobile access if you can. Recurring billing, provide clear payment instructions in your welcome packet, as I explained to you earlier on. I clearly state how they can pay me, the different platforms, my account numbers, and so forth. And I don't accept cash, and I don't accept checks anymore, unless it's really, really, really absolutely necessary. I just don't like it. I'd rather everything just be done electronically. I mean, this is 2025 now. It's not, those good old days are gone, where the check is in the mail or money orders and all this nonsense. Okay, number 3, setting the tone early. Setting the tone early, which means setting expectations right from the day one. And so the idea is that, have you trained your tenants to pay late? Have you trained them by not enforcing systems and not enforcing a right accountability? So tenants respond to the standards that you set. That's one thing I've learned. Tenants respond to the standards that you set, and and that comes in all. If certain things are acceptable and certain things are not acceptable. If it's not acceptable, you need to let your tenants know it's not acceptable early. I've made that mistake. Sometimes I got one tenant who, I didn't really enforce standards early, so it's a challenge now. But I try to be consistent across the board and set expectations of what my standards are in terms of cleanliness, in terms of taking care of their house, in terms of rent payments, compliance with lease terms, reporting maintenance issues. I try to set expectations, set standards, because if you allow, for example, if you allow late payments without consequences, and really, you kind of silently communicating to the tenant that due dates are quote unquote optional. They don't have to pay by the 1st. They don't have to pay by the 5th. They'll pay whenever they get time, or whenever they feel like it. So many landlords unintentionally train tenants to pay late by being overtly lenient at the beginning. Again, lack of setting expectation. Investors who have mastered rent collection make it a part of the culture from day one. During lease signing, they emphasize due dates, penalties, and benefits of on-time payments right from the get-go on day one. Some even provide small rewards or rent discounts for consistent on-time payments. Really creating a win-win relationship. Struggling landlords, on the other hand, tend to avoid tough conversations. They don't like drama. They don't like confrontation. So they try to avoid these difficult conversations. They let it slide the first time a tenant is late. But then again, and then it becomes the norm. So by the time you try to course correct, it's really too late. They've been trained to pay whenever they feel like it, because there's no consequences. So the tenant feels entitled to grace periods, and that were never really official. So what are some of the action items associated with setting the tone early? Explain rent policies in person and in writing before moving. I'm an in-person kind of guy. I like to communicate these things in person, and so that way we can make sure there's no misunderstanding, rather than just assuming that they understand and they've read their lease. Set and enforce due dates, consistency, and never waive late fees unless required by law, or if it's really exceptional circumstances. So we're kind of halfway through, and as usual, if you've got any questions, please put in the chat box. I'll get to them shortly. And anything to real estate, any problems, challenges, issues that you're facing, feel free to put them in the box, and I'll get to them very, very shortly. If you want to do a deep dive, on the other hand, you can book a one-on-one with me. Just go to my website, www.joeasimo.com. That's www.joeasimo.com, and you can book a session where we can do a real deep dive into a situation that you're experiencing, or a challenge that you're experiencing, where you feel like you can leverage my 35 years worth of experience. Okay, let's get that. Keep going. Let's go to communications and accountability. That's number 4. Communications and accountability. Are you? I suppose the question is, are you too nice to be effective? Are you too nice, quote unquote? There's nothing wrong with being a nice guy, but some people will take advantage of you if you're too nice, and so you kind of have to, set the right line, tone, and draw the line of certain things. So, for example, one of my tenants called me yesterday, and she said she was having difficulty with her water bill, and so she asked if I could pay her water bill, if we can increase the rent, and then, so that way, I can pay the water bill instead of her. And I said, I'm sorry, but I don't do that. I don't pay tenants utilities. It's not what I do. There's no accountability if I pay for it. There's nothing there's no incentive for them to save, or to be, to conserve water or energy and things like that. So I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. So you set the tone. You could be a good guy. I think I'm a good landlord, but there's certain lines that you don't cross. So being friendly doesn't necessarily mean being a pushover. Okay, you can be friendly, but you don't have to be a pushover. And many landlords mistake kindness for silence. If they don't say anything, then they feel like it's okay. Failing to remind, to follow up, and confront payment issues out of fear of conflict. They don't want to deal with conflict, so they rather just dodge them and not ignore them and pretend it's going to go away. Afraid of those difficult conversations. Successful investors, however, are proactive. They're firm and respectable communications. Firm, proactive. You don't wait until everything's falling apart, and you're respectful in your communications. They tend to send text reminders before rent is due. So maybe a couple of days before. I do that every 24 hours to 48 hours before the rent's due. I send a text message, just a reminder that if they don't pay by this certain date, there's a late fee that's going to be applied. I follow up if it's late, and I also use clear business-like language that removes emotion. Okay, so templates, and automation, can help eliminate hesitation. But those who struggle often let emotions cloud the process. They personalize late payments as like it's something against them. They avoid follow-ups or make inconsistent exceptions. So over time, this erodes trust, makes the enforcement harder. And additionally, strong communications is backed by documentation, formal documentation. Notices, it's really important. Notices are clear, payment plans are written, and late fees are never a surprise. Tenants know that if they don't pay by this date, there's going to be a late fee. There's no surprise, and so on. So what are some of the action items associated with step 4? Communication and accountability. Automate 3-day and day of rent reminders via email or SMS text. Create templates for late notices and payment plans. And also train yourself or professionalism, calm professional. Don't get too upset. You know, I know sometimes tenants boil your anger and frustration. Okay, number 5, responding to late payments and repeat offenders. These are people who always pay late. You know, I've got a couple of those. They always pay late. And I got some tenants who pay always on time or early. But every now and then you get these people who just don't pay on time, and you've got to harass them to get your money. You know, it's like they feel entitled. So are you reacting or are you managing? That's the question. Are you reacting or are you managing? So, you know, late rent will happen. Yeah, it's just the way it is. The question is whether you're prepared for it or are you always reacting? You know, successful landlords don't panic. They follow a system. They know when grace periods start and when grace periods ends, when to issue notices, and how to escalate if necessary. Okay. They also know when to let go. Sometimes it's just let it go. You know, life's too short. You know, pick your battles, as they say. You know, but one thing is repeat offenders, they always drain your time, your energy, and your money. So, you know, so successful investors, they recognize patterns and have a firm standard for what qualifies a tenant for renewal or not renewal. So if somebody is just consistently paying late or consistently giving you a lot of trouble, you know, you may have systems in place whereby you just don't want to renew their lease when it comes down for renewal. So clear policies, consistent follow through, and a strong understanding of local eviction laws really can protect your income. By contrast, those who fail at this step often wait too long. They extend grace periods indefinitely. They hope that the tenant behavior will change. And unfortunately, they end up winding up footing the bill for non-payers. So, you know, be a nice guy, but don't be a pushover. So what are some of the action items associated with common pitfalls and how to avoid them? Create and use warning thresholds for habitual late payers. You know, put systems in place for those people who always pay late. Track payment history per tenant and make data-based renewal decisions. And also work with legal counsel to act quickly when needed. Finally, number 6, which is long-term rent collection strategies. Long-term rent collection strategies. And the question is, are you building habits or fighting fires? You know, are you building habits or fighting fires? Rent collection shouldn't be a recurring emergency. It can't be just a monthly, oh my God, battles. Smart landlords create habits, systems, and checkpoints to make rent day predictable. Over time, these habits help you help you scale, you know, from 1 door to 10 doors to 50 doors or more. You know, successful landlords build operations that run like a business. You know, they use KPIs, which is key performance indicators, to track rent performances, review systems quarterly, and upgrade tools as needed. I'm putting these systems. I've got some really, really, I think, pretty good systems for tracking you know, how my business is doing. You know, I mean, I was working with this guy. He's in India somewhere, and a really good guy. Using Google tools and to put some, you know, it's really impressive. I mean, at any time, I know exactly what's going on in my business. We have charts, pie charts, bar graphs, reports. We've got this dashboard that he set up for me. And we had a meeting today. We got another one tomorrow. Friday, and looking forward to having those things in place. It's really just systems and tools to help you make decisions on your business. You know, and tenant experiences, it's just the way it is. But the idea is that your experience and also your returns and the tenant experience hopefully should improve over time. Landlords who operate without these habits constantly fight fire, constantly they're chasing rents, dealing with complaints, losing money to late payments. So the difference isn't the property, it's the process. And some of the action items to wrap this up: evaluate your rent systems quarterly for improvements, track rent collections, KPIs, key performance indicators, set them up, and share results with your team. Train staff and managers on clear rent enforcement protocols, and build a system that works without daily intervention. And that, my friends, is it. So let me just wrap it up in conclusion. Rent collection isn't about the money, it's about the mindset. Investors who treat it like a serious, structured, and professional process are rewarded with consistent cash flow, stronger tenant relationships, and greater peace of mind. So this live stream, hopefully I've helped you walk through the systems that I have and the strategies that I put in place, that other investors put in place to win on rent day, from onboarding to automation, from incentives to enforcement. So along the way, we've seen what works, what fails, and what to avoid. Hopefully, I've shared with you some quality information which you can use. So whether you're a beginner, a seasoned pro, the same principles apply. Be clear, be consistent, be firm, but also be fair. Rent should never be a surprise. It should be a system. My friends, that is it. So again, if you got any questions, please put them in the chat box. Definitely try and get to them shortly. And if you want to shoot me an email, you can email me at joe@joeasimo.com. That's joe@joeasimo.com. That's my email address. If you want to book a one-on-one with me, just go to my website, www.joeasimo.com, www.joeasimo.com. And that, my friends, is it.